My name is Sarah Johnson. I'm 35 years old, and for the past 5 years, I've worked at a McDonald's in the heart of the city. It's not a glamorous job, but it's honest work, and I've always done my best to make every customer's day just a little brighter. This morning started like any other, serving customers, wiping down tables, and reminding myself that this job, no matter how tough, was putting food on the table for my teenage daughter, Emma, and helping me care for my aging mother. The lunch rush was in full swing when he came in, an elderly man, walking slowly with a cane. His clothes were clean but worn, his hands trembling as he approached the counter. His watery eyes scanned the menu with hesitation. "Good afternoon, sir. How can I help you today?" I asked, offering him my warmest smile. "Good afternoon, young lady," he replied, his voice shaky but polite. "I'd like a coffee and maybe a small burger, please." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a handful of coins, fumbling with them as he tried to count. I could see the frustration building in his movements. After a long pause, he looked up at me, his face flushed with embarrassment. I don't think I have enough," he muttered, his voice barely audible. "I'm sorry. I'll just go." My heart ached for him. Without even thinking, I reached into my pocket, pulled out my card, and swiped it through the reader. "Don't worry about it, sir," I said softly. "This one's on me." The old man's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you, miss. You don't know what this means to me." "It's nothing," I replied, my voice shaking a little. "Enjoy your meal." What I didn't notice was the cold, calculating gaze of my coworker Mark, who had been watching the whole exchange. He smirked and slipped into the manager's office. The rest of the shift passed uneventfully until I heard the dreaded words over the intercom. "Sarah, can you come to the office, please?" I walked in to find my manager, John, sitting behind his desk, his face as stern as ever. "Sarah, I understand you paid for a customer's meal today. Is that true?" "Yes," I admitted, confusion and dread bubbling up in my chest. It was just a small burger and coffee for an elderly man who didn't have enough money. I couldn't let him go hungry. John sighed heavily, his disappointment evident. "I understand your intentions, but that's against company policy. We can't allow employees to pay for customers' meals. It sets a bad precedent and creates accounting issues. Sarah, I'm sorry, but this isn't the first time you've bent the rules. I have to let you go." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. "Please, John," I begged, my voice breaking. "I need this job. My daughter, my mother. I'll follow the rules from now on, I promise." "I'm sorry, Sarah," he said, handing me an envelope with my severance pay. "Collect your things." I left the office in a daze, my heart heavy and my eyes burning with unshed tears. As I walked out of the restaurant for the last time, I couldn't help but question whether I had done the right thing. But then I remembered the gratitude in the old man's eyes. Despite the cost, I couldn't regret my decision. That night, as I sat at the kitchen table staring at the pile of bills I had no idea how I'd pay, I made a promise to myself. I would get back on my feet. Somehow, I would find a way. The days after my firing blurred together in a haze of worry and self-doubt. I spent hours combing through job postings, sending out resumes, and praying for something to stick. But the silence from potential employers was deafening. My savings dwindled as bills piled up on the kitchen table, their looming deadlines a constant reminder of my new reality. Emma, my 16-year-old daughter, tried to be cheerful and reassuring, but I saw through her brave face. She was worried too. My mother's health weighed heavily on me, her mounting medical expenses a stark contrast to the few dollars left in my bank account. Every night I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, questioning if my small act of kindness had been worth it. Then, on an otherwise unremarkable Wednesday afternoon, the phone rang. The sound startled me out of my thoughts as I sat at the kitchen table, a half-eaten sandwich on the plate in front of me. For a moment, I hesitated, fearing it was yet another creditor calling to remind me of overdue payments. With a deep breath, I picked up the receiver. "Hello, is this Sarah Johnson?" The voice on the other end was calm, deep, and unfamiliar. Yes, this is Sarah, I replied cautiously. Who's calling? My name is Robert Williams, the man said. I'm the owner of the McDonald's franchise where you worked. I'd like to meet with you to discuss something important. Are you available today? My heart skipped a beat. The owner of the franchise? I couldn't imagine why he'd want to meet with me. Had he heard about what happened? Was this another reprimand, a legal warning, or something worse? Of course, I managed to say, trying to keep my voice steady. Where would you like to meet? How about the corner cafe at 3 p.m., he suggested. I glanced at the clock on the wall. It was just past 1 p.m. That left me 2 hours to prepare. My mind raced with possibilities. I'll be there, I said, my voice trembling with a mix of hope and apprehension. As I hung up the phone, I stared at it for a moment, trying to process what had just happened. Why would the franchise owner take an interest in me, especially after I'd been fired? I couldn't shake the feeling that this meeting would either be an opportunity or the final nail in the coffin of my already struggling self-esteem. The corner cafe was a charming little spot tucked away on a quiet street. Its warm yellow lights and wooden decor created a cozy atmosphere that felt at odds with the anxiety churning in my stomach. As I walked in, the scent of freshly brewed coffee filled the air, but it did little to calm my nerves. I spotted Robert Williams immediately. He sat at a table near the back, impeccably dressed in a dark suit, his posture confident and composed. When our eyes met, he stood and offered a polite smile. "Miss Johnson," he said, extending his hand. "Thank you for meeting me on such short notice." "Of course," I replied, shaking his hand. His grip was firm, but his demeanor seemed genuine. "Thank you for reaching out." We sat across from each other, and after the waiter took our drink orders, Robert got straight to the point. "Miss Johnson, I asked to meet with you because of an incident that happened 2 weeks ago at the McDonald's where you worked," he began, his expression serious but kind. "You helped an elderly man by paying for his meal out of your own pocket. Do you remember?" The question took me by surprise. My mind instantly flashed back to that day, the old man's trembling hands, his gratitude, and the cold dismissal I'd received afterward. "Yes, I remember," I said softly, unsure of where this was going. "That man," Robert continued, his voice steady, "is my father." His words hit me like a freight train. I blinked, trying to process what he had just said. "Your father?" I echoed, my voice barely above a whisper. Robert nodded. "My father has early-stage Alzheimer's. Sometimes he goes out for walks and forgets to bring his wallet. That day, he came home and told me about a kind woman who had paid for his meal when he couldn't afford it. I can't tell you how much your act of kindness meant to him and to me." Tears welled up in my eyes. I had no idea that my small gesture had left such an impact. "I'm so glad I could help," I said, my voice trembling with emotion. "But I lost my job because of it." "I know," Robert said, his tone darkening. "When I found out you were fired for what you did, I was outraged. That's not the kind of company I want to run." I looked at him, unsure of what to say. Was he here to apologize on behalf of the company? "Miss Johnson, I want to offer you a job," Robert said, leaning forward. "Not just any job. I'd like you to come back to the McDonald's as the general manager." For a moment, I thought I had misheard him. "General manager?" I repeated, disbelief etched across my face. "I've never been a manager before. I'm not sure I'm qualified." Robert smiled. "You're exactly what we need. I've looked into your work history, and I've spoken to your former colleagues. You're hardworking, compassionate, and honest. Those are the qualities I value most in a leader. The technical skills can be taught, but integrity can't be faked." Tears streamed down my face as the weight of his words sank in. I had gone from being humiliated and fired to being offered an opportunity one never thought possible. "I don't know what to say," I whispered. "Say yes," Robert said with a smile. "The position comes with a competitive salary, full benefits, and the chance to make positive changes in the restaurant. What do you say?" Taking a deep breath, I wiped my tears and nodded. "Yes," I said firmly. "Thank you, Mr. Williams. I promise I won't let you down." "Call me Robert," he said, shaking my hand. "Welcome aboard, Sarah." As I left the cafe, a sense of hope and determination filled me. This was my chance to prove myself, to turn things around, and to create a better future for Emma and my mother. Little did I know, this new role would come with challenges I couldn't yet imagine. But for the first time in weeks, I felt like I was exactly where I was meant to be. The morning of my first day as general manager was a whirlwind of emotions, excitement, nerves, and a lingering sense of disbelief. I woke up before my alarm, my mind racing with ideas and plans for how I could improve the restaurant. Emma, my ever-supportive daughter, met me in the kitchen, still in her pajamas. "You've got this, Mom," she said with a confident smile, handing me a cup of coffee. "They're lucky to have you." Her words warmed my heart and gave me the boost I needed as I headed out the door. The walk to the restaurant felt different today. The same McDonald's that had been a source of heartbreak was now a place of opportunity. But as I approached the familiar building, doubts crept in. Would the staff respect me? Would I be able to handle the responsibilities? When I entered, a hush fell over the dining area. Employees paused mid-task, their eyes wide with curiosity and, in some cases, skepticism. "Good morning, everyone," I said, trying to project confidence. "I'm Sarah Johnson, your new general manager. I'm looking forward to working with all of you to make this restaurant the best it can be." Most of the staff responded with polite nods and murmurs, but I couldn't miss the smirk on Mark's face. He leaned against the counter, arms crossed, and muttered something to a coworker that made her stifle a laugh. Ignoring the tension, I pressed on. John, the former manager who had fired me, approached with a clipboard. His expression was tense, his tone clipped. "I've been instructed to help with the transition. Let me know if you need anything." "Thank you, John," I replied with a calm smile, though I could feel the weight of his resentment. The day was a crash course in management. I reviewed schedules, inventory lists, and financial reports while fielding questions from employees and customers alike. By lunchtime, I realized just how much I had to learn. But I wasn't afraid of hard work. I'd spent years balancing multiple jobs to support my family. This was just a new challenge. When the lunch rush hit, I grabbed an apron and joined the service line. The staff seemed surprised to see me taking orders and flipping burgers alongside them. "What are you doing here, boss?" Mark asked with a raised eyebrow, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "I'm part of the team, Mark," I said evenly. "And sometimes the team needs all hands on deck." He snorted but didn't argue. As the hours passed, I noticed a shift in the atmosphere. The employees who had been standoffish earlier began to relax. By the end of the day, a cashier named Lisa approached me. "I wasn't sure about you at first," she admitted shyly. "But I like the way you work. You're not afraid to get your hands dirty." "Thank you, Lisa," I said, genuinely touched. "I'm here to support all of you, and I hope we can make this place better together." As I wrapped up my first day, I gathered the staff for a brief meeting. "I know change can be difficult," I began, addressing the room. "But I want you all to know that my door is always open. If you have ideas, concerns, or anything you'd like to discuss, I'm here to listen. Let's work together to make this restaurant a place we can all be proud of." The response was mixed. Some employees smiled and nodded, while others, like Mark, remained aloof. Still, I felt a glimmer of hope. This was only the beginning, and I was determined to earn their trust. Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into the job with everything I had. I implemented an anonymous suggestion system for employees, reorganized schedules to give staff more flexibility, and introduced new training programs to improve customer service. Slowly but surely, the restaurant began to change. Customers noticed the difference. Regulars complimented the friendlier atmosphere, and sales started to tick upward. I felt a surge of pride every time a customer left with a smile, knowing that our hard work was paying off. But not everyone was on board. Mark, in particular, seemed determined to undermine me at every turn. He spread rumors among the staff, questioning my qualifications and insinuating that I had pulled strings to get the job. I tried to address his concerns directly, but he brushed off my attempts to talk. One evening, as I was cleaning up after a busy day, I overheard Mark talking on the phone in the break room. His voice was low and urgent, but the words I caught made my blood run cold. "She's too good at this," he muttered. "The plan isn't working. We'll have to try something else." My heart pounded as I silently backed away, my mind racing. Was Mark involved in something more sinister than workplace gossip? And what plan was he talking about? The next morning, chaos erupted. The kitchen equipment malfunctioned, orders were delayed, and the card payment system went down, leaving customers frustrated and angry. I worked tirelessly to manage the crisis, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't a coincidence. As I dealt with the fallout, Lisa approached me, her face pale. "Sarah," she whispered, "I overheard Mark talking to someone about sabotaging the restaurant." I didn't know what to do, but I thought you should know. Her confession confirmed my worst fears. Mark wasn't just disgruntled, he was actively working against me. I thanked Lisa for her honesty and assured her that I would handle the situation. But as I watched Mark smirking in the corner, I realized this was more than a personal vendetta. Something deeper was at play, and I was determined to uncover the truth. The storm was building, and I could feel it in the tension that hung over the restaurant like a dark cloud. But I wasn't going to back down. This place wasn't just a job to me anymore. It was a second chance, a lifeline for my family, and a beacon of hope for the community. I wouldn't let anyone take that away. The morning after Lisa's confession, I woke up with a heavy weight on my chest. The thought of confronting Mark sent a shiver down my spine, but I knew it had to be done. If I let this go on any longer, the restaurant, and the trust one had worked so hard to build, could be irreparably damaged. I arrived early, determined to speak to him before the chaos of the day began. Mark was in the break room, sipping coffee with his usual air of smug indifference. He didn't seem to notice me until I closed the door behind me. "Mark, we need to talk," I said, keeping my voice steady despite the nervous flutter in my chest. He raised an eyebrow, his expression a mix of boredom and irritation. "What now, boss?" "I know what you've been doing," I said firmly. "And I'm giving you a chance to come clean. Whatever issues you have with me or this restaurant, sabotaging our work isn't the way to handle them." Mark's smirk faltered for a moment, replaced by a flash of anger. "I don't know what you're talking about." I took a step closer, refusing to back down. "Lisa overheard you. And I heard you too, talking about some plan that isn't working. Mark, if you have something to say, now's the time." For a moment, I thought he might deny it again. But then he slammed his coffee cup down on the table, his face twisting with bitterness. "Fine," he snapped. "You want the truth? I don't think you deserve this job. You waltz in here with your good intentions and big ideas, and everyone acts like you're some kind of savior. But you're not. You don't understand what it's like to work here, day after day, without anyone caring about you." His words stung, but I forced myself to stay calm. "I know it's been hard, Mark. Believe me, I've been there. But tearing this place down won't make it better." "You don't get it," he said, his voice rising. "This place has been broken for years. And no matter what you do, it's not going to change." I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. "Maybe it won't change overnight. But we're making progress, Mark. And if you're willing to work with me instead of against me, we can turn this place around together." Mark stared at me, his expression unreadable. For a moment, I thought he might soften. But then he shook his head and pushed past me, muttering under his breath, "This isn't over." The tension with Mark lingered, but I didn't have time to dwell on it. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity as I tried to uncover the full extent of the sabotage. Then, just as I thought things couldn't get any worse, Detective Ramirez showed up unannounced. "Miss Johnson," he said, his tone serious. "I need to speak with you in private." I led him to my office, my stomach churning with anxiety. Ramirez wasted no time getting to the point. "We've uncovered some financial irregularities in the restaurant's accounts," he said. "They date back several years, but we need to determine how far they go and who's responsible." My heart sank. I've been reviewing the books since I started as manager, and everything seemed fine. Ramirez nodded. The discrepancies are subtle, but they're there. It's possible someone has been cooking the books for a long time. The weight of his words hit me like a punch to the gut. What do you need from me? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Full access to your records, he said. And your cooperation in identifying anyone who might be involved. I agreed, though my mind was racing. Who could have been behind this? And how deep did the corruption go? That evening, after the restaurant closed, I stayed late to review the records again. As I sifted through the stacks of receipts and reports, a pattern began to emerge, small, seemingly inconsequential discrepancies that added up to something much bigger. Then I found it. Hidden in a stack of old files was a second set of books, meticulously kept but clearly fraudulent. My hands trembled as I flipped through the pages, each entry confirming my worst fears. I was about to call Detective Ramirez when the door to my office opened. It was Robert. "Sarah, we need to talk," he said, his expression grave. I motioned for him to sit, still clutching the incriminating books. "What's going on?" Robert took a deep breath, his shoulders slumping as if under an unbearable weight. "There's something I need to tell you," he began. "The financial problems didn't start with you. They've been going on for years, long before you took over." My stomach turned. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I thought I could fix it," Robert admitted. "I didn't want to drag you into it, but now it's clear that the damage is worse than I thought." His words confirmed what I had already suspected. But they also left me with a choice: to expose everything and risk the fallout, or to try to fix the mess quietly. The next morning, I gathered the staff for a meeting. My voice shook as I addressed them. "There's something important you all need to know," I began. "The restaurant has been facing financial irregularities that go back years. It's a serious issue, and I've decided to cooperate fully with the authorities to resolve it." The room erupted into whispers and murmurs, but I held up my hand to silence them. "I know this is shocking, and I know many of you are worried about your jobs. But I promise you, I will do everything I can to protect this team and rebuild the trust we've worked so hard to earn." To my surprise, it was Lisa who stood up first. "We trust you, Sarah," she said firmly. "You've done so much for us already. We'll get through this together." Her words brought tears to my eyes. Slowly, the rest of the staff began to nod in agreement, even Mark, who gave me a grudging look of respect. In the days that followed, we worked tirelessly to set things right. We implemented new financial controls, cooperated with the investigation, and launched a campaign to rebuild our reputation in the community. It wasn't easy, but with each small victory, I felt a renewed sense of hope. And then, one afternoon, something extraordinary happened. A letter arrived from McDonald's corporate headquarters, praising our transparency and commitment to ethical practices. They wanted to feature our restaurant as a model for other franchises. As I read the letter aloud to the staff, the room erupted into cheers. For the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of something I hadn't dared to hope for: pride. We still had a long way to go, but in that moment, I knew we were on the right path. Together, we could turn this restaurant into something truly extraordinary. And for the first time, I allowed myself to believe that we would succeed.